So this is that Bill Epstein.
Yeah.
Who became Randasarupa. He didn't come back. I've not heard of him. Apart from this, what is mentioned here, where he says he left.
Okay.
I haven't read anything about him. But it's very interesting how Prabhupada, you cannot expect to get something better than that. And even after that, if you leave, what can be done? What can be said? The way Prabhupada dealt with him.
It's their unfortune or misfortune or their, I don't know what to say. Yes. And maybe their misfortune.
You could say the greatest, misfortune.
Yes, true. Maybe they had only that much of karma, like good karma, what they had done.
No.
Where they
It's got nothing to do with karma or anything, It's got nothing to do with karma. It's just got to do with free will. You had a full opportunity. This is exactly what is meant by misusing free will, because you get the best. You can't imagine anything better than this. But still, he leaves, right? What can you expect more than this? Even so many disciples would have hankered for something like this from Prabhupada. But he got the best that you could ever get. Still he left. This is called misuse of free will.
That is misuse of independence, the minute independence what we are having, we can say.
Yeah. I think everybody's silent, savoring what we all read so far. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's so personal, this whole description. It really touches the heart. And the relationship that Prabhupada, how he felt and how his disciples were also responding to him. And to think that these were all teenagers who, at that age, it's so difficult to relate to them. And here is somebody who's so senior and they're all relating to him so personally. It's really amazing.
Not all of them are teenagers. Many of them are in their early 20s and things like that. The Rupanuga Prabhu says he was 27, right? Anyway, they were, some of them are teenagers, definitely. And very young people, very, very young people, yes. Which is one thing which I think Dr. Larry Shin makes this point, that Prabhupada is an old man and these were very young people. And yet he could really attract them so much. It's quite baffling from a material point of view. How could an old man attract so many young people, and they're just giving their hearts to him? Because Prabhupada gave them love, they reciprocated. As Rupanuga Prabhu was saying, he didn't know there is so much love in his heart. So Prabhupada had that. That's I think, the greatest quality of a pure devotee, that by his presence, he can draw out love from the hearts of those who come to him with whatever amount of sincerity. And I'm sure that as we read this chapter, all of us may have had the experience of we're there in that scene as Prabhupada is departing and whatever. The whole this thing from his departure from San Francisco to his arrival in New York and finally his departure.
It's every part of it, it's not that just he's leaving or anything. Any of his classes or whatever is the relationship, what he's communicating with his other disciples, anything, everything is like we feel that we are present there, or we can feel that one also.
Yeah. And this another, like even the Lilamrita once, because during Prabhupada's presence, he was asked whether we could write a biography. So Prabhupada was, out of his humility, he said no. But later on, he said, fine, but he said if somebody would do it, it should be Satsarupa. So Satsarupa Maharaj is really, has got that, what do you call it? He's a transparent via media to Prabhupada, as you can say. He's really bringing out, this to somebody to capture to the extent, the sense that all the different, the way he is, he's not missed up anything, to practically say that, like the way he has captured it.
Yes, Prabhu. Minute details also he has given, like that we can feel the atmosphere also, how it is, and it can maybe we can see, okay, this is like this and all. Especially the rooms and all, sometimes they will describe, so how it is, where it is. We can imagine those locations or something like that.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Like he was
Every
telling that
small detail. Because
yeah,
sometimes,
small dais
sometimes it's
or
a
the Madras
lizard.
car, yeah,
Correct.
the Madras drapes or whatever is, we can imagine.
Yeah. Sometimes he would even write things like, occasionally there is a lizard patrolling the wall. Yeah. So many things he writes actually. Yeah. Okay. So we'll go ahead. The story continues. What happens when he reaches India and things like that. So if there are no more questions or comments or thoughts or reflections, then we'll go ahead to the next chapter. Next chapter is called India Revisited, Part 1. Okay.
Chapter 27, India Revisited, Part 1. The plane flew during the night and arrived in London by morning. Srila Prabhupada had planned a stopover. He checked into an airport hotel, took his massage, and rested. In the afternoon, he rose and bathed, and then he and Kirtananda boarded their plane, bound for New Delhi via Moscow. While the plane was still on the ground, however, a crew member announced a short delay due to health regulations. A passenger who had disembarked earlier that day was now sick, apparently with smallpox, so the plane would have to be thoroughly fumigated. Prabhupada and Kirtananda stayed in a room at the Excelsior Hotel for the night. Early the next morning, July 24th, seated in his hotel room, complete with air conditioning and television, neither of which he had used, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Brahmananda in New York. Accept my blessings. I am always thinking of your separation feelings. Please do your duty nicely, and Krishna will help you in all respects. We were delayed here for 16 hours, starting this morning at 9 for Delhi. The attention of Mr. B.K. Nehru, the ambassador of India, was drawn to me the other day. I have told him about my permanent visa, and he has promised to help me when I come back. Please make an appointment with him, informing that I wish to present him our set of Bhagavatam and our other literatures. Then go to him and personally present the books, etc., at Washington, D.C. It may be that as soon as I feel some strength, I shall be coming back. Up to now, there was no disturbance about my health, and I hope to reach Delhi this night. I shall write you again after reaching Vrindavan. Convey my ardent affection and blessings for all the boys and girls. I am very much hopeful of my movement. Please keep steady. Follow all my instructions scrupulously. Chant Hare Krishna, and Krishna will give you all strength. Prabhupada and Kirtananda flew to Moscow. There they walked around the terminal, observing what Prabhupada called propaganda pictures. After a 1 hour stopover, they reboarded and flew another 8 hours, arriving in Delhi around midnight. The wall of heat that greeted them felt good to Prabhupada. He had come for this. Inside the airport terminal, overhead fans stirred the muggy air as Prabhupada and Kesananda stood in slow-moving lines while uniformed clerks checked passports and customs forms without Western-style computers or efficiency. Just beyond the areas for immigration and customs, people waiting for arriving passengers were waving, calling, and coming together with friends and family members. After Prabhupada and Kirtananda claimed their luggage and cleared customs, they stood on the sidewalk outside the terminal. Although Prabhupada had removed his sweater, Kirtananda stood sweltering in his black wool suit. It was 2 a.m. All around, passengers were meeting loved ones who embraced them, sometimes even garlanded them, and helped them into cars or taxis. But no one was there for Prabhupada. It was certainly different from the recent tearful airport scenes where Prabhupada had been with his loved ones. Now, instead of being surrounded by loving disciples, Prabhupada was besieged by taxi drivers and porters wanting to carry his luggage for a fee. In Hindi, Prabhupada asked one of the drivers to take them to Chippivada in Old Delhi. The driver put their luggage in the trunk, and Prabhupada and his disciple climbed into the back seat. The small ambassador taxi drove through streets well known to Srila Prabhupada. Nighttime traffic was light, an occasional taxi or motor rickshaw. Mostly the streets were empty and quiet, the shops closed, an occasional person or cow sleeping outdoors. Just a few years before, Prabhupada had sold Back to Godhead magazines, solicited donations, and printed his Srimad Bhagavatams here. In those days, he had been alone, practically without money or residence. Yet he had been happy, completely dependent on Krishna. But India's leaders were rejecting Vedic culture and imitating the West. Although some Indians still professed to follow Vedic culture, mostly they were victims of hodgepodge teachers who didn't accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he had felt obliged to leave, to go and transplant the Vedic culture in the West. He had held strictly to the vision of his predecessor spiritual masters, and he had been proven right. The West was a very good field for Krishna consciousness. As the taxi drove through Old Delhi and approached Chowri Bazaar, Prabhupada saw the printing and paper shops now closed for the night, and the usual dense traffic of human-hauled carts was now absent, although some laborers were sleeping on their carts till the morning, when they would bathe in an outdoor well and begin another day's hauling. When Srila Prabhupada had been overseeing the publishing of his first volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had daily walked the streets, buying paper, picking up proofs from the printer, returning with the corrected proofs. His first canto had been a triumph. Chowri Bazaar led to side streets that led to the narrow lanes of Chippivada, where upright metal posts blocked autos and rickshaws from entering. The driver stopped the taxi on an empty road and turned for his payment. Prabhupada took from his billfold 40 rupees, the same 40 rupees he had carried with him on the boat to America in 1965. But the driver took the entire 40 rupees and said he would keep it all as the just fare. Prabhupada protested. The fare should not be even half that. Loudly, they argued back and forth in Hindi. The driver had pocketed the money and would give no change. Prabhupada knew that to get a policeman at this hour would be very difficult. Finally, although this had been nothing less than robbery, Prabhupada let the man go. He cheated me, Prabhupada said. He and Kirtananda took their luggage and walked the last block up to the door of the Chippivada Radhakrishna temple. It was locked. As they pounded loudly, Prabhupada called out for Sri Krishna Pandit until a man came to the door, recognized Prabhupada and let them in. The man showed them upstairs and unlocked the door to Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada turned on the light. The room was bare and dusty, and the bulb hanging from the ceiling created stark light and shadows. On the floor was the 3-foot-high cement dome, indicating that directly below were the altar and the deities of Radha Krishna. The dome prevented anyone from accidentally committing the offense of walking directly above the deities. The closet was stacked with printed Srimad Bhagavatam pages, Srimad Bhagavatam dust jackets, and form letters to prospective members of the League of Devotees. Everything was just as Prabhupada had left it. This is the room where I compiled Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada told Kirtananda. I slept here, and over here was my cooker and my typewriter. I would sleep and type, and cook and type, and sleep and type. Kirtananda was shocked to think of Swamiji living here in such a poor, humble place. It wasn't even clean. Although Kirtananda was uncomfortable in his suit and wondered when he would be able to get rid of it, he managed to get a thin mattress for Swamiji. 2 Ayurvedic doctors came. They both agreed that the trouble was Swamiji's heart, but the danger was now past. They gave him medicines and advised him to keep a regulated schedule of eating, resting, and working. Sri Krishna Pandit came by to sit and converse, and Prabhupada told him of his success in America and of all the young devotees in New York and San Francisco. Prabhupada played his record for Sri Krishna Pandit, and this drew a crowd of curious persons from other rooms in the temple. In the afternoon, Prabhupada developed a cough. It didn't seem serious, and he said he wanted to travel the next day to Vrindavan. But by evening, the cough had become persistent. He couldn't rest. Kirtananda tried massages and the pills the Ayurvedic doctors had prescribed, but nothing worked. Prabhupada remained awake all night, and when Kirtananda touched him in the morning, he was feverish. The doctors came again. Prabhupada's temperature was over 104. They gave teas and Ayurvedic powders, while Kirtananda looked on skeptically. Because Prabhupada was having a lot of difficulty breathing when he lay down, Kirtananda thought it might be pneumonia. So Kirtananda gave him penicillin, of which he had brought a supply. In the afternoon, an elderly sick doctor who practiced Western medicine came by and gave Prabhupada a penicillin injection. Prabhupada then fell asleep and rested quietly for the first time in 24 hours. While Prabhupada slept, Kirtananda wrote a letter to his god brothers in New York. I know you would like me to say straight out my opinion as to how he is, and that is not good. The outcome, as always, but now very apparently, is only in Krishna's hands. Please chant Hare Krishna, for that is the only thing that can save him. That is what saved him before, and that can do it again. I know that his task is not yet complete, and by Krishna's mercy, he can again be spared. Kirtananda also asked the New York devotees to call the devotees in San Francisco, Santa Fe, and Boston and have them continue chanting for Swamiji's health. He reminded them to strictly follow all of Swamiji's instructions. The next day, Srila Prabhupada's fever was down to 100.6. He was still sick, but he talked again of going to Vrindavan. He dictated a letter to his book-selling agents in Delhi, Atmaram and Sons, asking them for an up-to-date account of their sales of Srimad Bhagavatam. Old acquaintances came by and were disappointed to find Swamiji unable to accept their invitations. Prabhupada asked that they invite Kirtananda instead. In his stead. For several days, Kirtananda visited the homes of these pious Hindus. He played the record on his portable phonograph, chanting along and dancing with his arms upraised. Then he would give a short speech. His hosts accepted him as a sadhu, fascinated that an American had taken so seriously to Krishna consciousness. On August 1st, after 6 days in Delhi, Prabhupada went to Vrindavan. Kirtananda wrote back to New York. My dear brothers and sisters, greetings in the name of Krishna from Vrindavan. Obviously, Swamiji is much better, especially after reaching Vrindavan. His eyes now have a special glow. We left Delhi yesterday, 31st morning, on the Taj Express, and in 2 hours were in Mathura. We rode special third class, and it was quite satisfactory. Not at all crowded like the usual third class. Anyway, we are now here and are in the process of settling down. Swamiji has 2 very nice rooms, quite cool, just off the porch where the Bhagavatam is read, now appropriate. The only difficulty on his behalf is that these Indians all want to see him, and they are very persistent, and I'm not very successful in keeping them out. Vrindavan, seen materially, is a very beautiful place. The country is very flat, and there are many trees, monkeys, peacocks, and of course temples. It is also very poor. Both the people and the temples are in a bad state of disrepair. But spiritually considered, there are many great devotees here, and it is wonderful to walk on the streets and see tilaks all over the place and people chanting on their beads. If I can develop a fraction of their devotion for Krishna, my life will be successful. It is also thrilling to hear the temple bells ringing so many times throughout the day. Last night, I played our record for Lord Damodar here, the temple, and then performed kirtan with some of the local devotees. It was very nice, but you will be surprised, I think, when I say that I prefer your kirtan in New York. After Prabhupada had been in Vrindavan only 1 day and his health had only slightly improved, he began planning his return to America. I am always thinking of you, he wrote to the devotees, whom he addressed as his dear students. I cannot stop my Western world activities. I have taken leave from you only for 6 months, and it may be that on or before I will come to you again. Kirtananda says from my bodily feature that I am improving. I am also feeling like that. In Delhi, Prabhupada had received a letter from Brahmananda saying that the Macmillan Company was definitely interested in publishing the Bhagavad Gita. In Vrindavan, Prabhupada wrote Brahmananda to sign a contract at once on his behalf. Prabhupada had been considering whether to print privately in Japan or India or to wait for Macmillan. He wasn't concerned with the prestige and financial advantage of publishing through Macmillan. His first concern was to print as quickly as possible. I shall be satisfied with the commission and shall only be glad to see that the books are being read by hundreds and thousands of men. Whatever profit may be derived from it will be utilized for the development of an American house here. Prabhupada stayed in his old rooms at the Radha Damodar temple. Still incapacitated, he was being massaged and cared for by Kirtananda, who himself was listless and tired from the heat. But Prabhupada continued to range from one active and ambitious vision for his youthful Krishna consciousness movement to another. He would think aloud about the volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam all ready to be published. If Macmillan would take them and the boys could act on his behalf, there was so much to do. He wanted to return by October and oversee things personally. Temperatures rose to more than 110 degrees, and Prabhupada and Kirtananda had to stay inside with the doors shut and the overhead fan on. Although Kirtananda could barely perform his duties, Prabhupada found the heat bracing and said that it was restoring his health. Then, after the first week, the monsoon rains began and the heat broke. On August 10, Kirtananda wrote home again. God, it's a hot place. But at last, the rains have started again and there is some relief from the heat. You can believe me when I say that it was hot. But now it is raining a great deal of time. And that has made the weather quite comfortable for me. But unfortunately, not for Swamiji. Also, I have developed the inevitable case of dysentery, which has been persisting for about a week now. Yesterday began the festival of Julan, in which Radha and Krishna come out and swing for about 5 days. So I made the rounds of about half a dozen temples here. Some of them are extremely beautiful inside, although most are small. Still, I can say this with all truthfulness and sincerity that none are so transcendently beautiful and spiritual as 3720 Park Avenue, Montreal. And I think even Swamiji would agree with me there. Kirtananda's letter gave heart to the devotees back home and confirmed their suspicion. It was not Hinduism, not India, it was Swamiji and chanting Hare Krishna that was sustaining their spiritual life.
This is a very important point, that it was not Hinduism, not India, which is sustaining their spiritual life. It was Swamiji who was sustaining their spiritual life. And one other point which I want to mention was, I don't know how many of you are aware, but this Chippiwada temple has been fully acquired by ISKCON. It's an ISKCON temple now, where Prabhupada used to stay. When I visited there in 2015, they got it a few years before that. I visited there in 2015 or 14, I don't remember when. Maybe 14 or 15. So when I went and saw that the dome of the temple, the place where Prabhupada sat. But I've heard, it is very difficult to get there, but fortunately, Delhi has a metro. So metro takes you almost within 200 to 300 meters of the temple, and it's a very crowded area. So whatever Satsurumar has written here is true. Somehow Prabhupada managed to live there and publish Srimad Bhagavatam. And today I've heard that the temple is much more elaborately and beautifully done. And it's worth a visit the next time that you're, of course, any place that Prabhupada visited is worth a visit. So it will be, you can keep that on your travel list when you come to India to visit this temple of Chippiwada. It's now called ISKCON Chippiwada. Okay. This Hinduism, not India. The thing is that in India, bhakti is not something which is unheard of. Through ages, this word bhakti has been heard of, and there are hundreds of bhaktas in India. But our process that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave, Rupa Goswami gave, is the process of pure bhakti. That is Uttama Bhakti, Kevala Bhakti, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave. That has never been so easily found anywhere in India. So when we say Hinduism or India, it's all mixed with different modes of material nature. Bhakti mixed with different kinds of modes, and some not even bhakti and other kinds of things, impersonalism and all other things. So this is a very interesting point, very relevant point which Satsurupara makes, that it was not Hinduism or India that was sustaining them. It was Swamiji and chanting Hare Krishna that is sustaining their spiritual life. Please go ahead, Manoj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, Prabhu. Yeah. As Prabhupada's spiritual children rode from the fledgling centers in half a dozen cities in North America, he would reply, Vrindavan is an inspiration only, but our real field work is all over the world. Even if I die, you are my future hopes and you will do it. I'm feeling very much for you all. Please let the ball roll on, just as it is set. Brahmananda wrote from New York asking for an explanation of why Swamiji, a pure devotee, was suffering serious illness. Swamiji had explained that conditioned souls and even beginning devotees are attacked by Maya. But was Swamiji also being attacked by Maya? On August 14, Srila Prabhupada replied, Don't be afraid of my being attacked by Maya. When there is fight between two belligerent parties, it is always expected that there will sometimes be reverses. Your country and the Western world is mostly under the grip of Maya and the modes of nature in passion and ignorance. And my declaration of war against Maya is certainly a great battle. Maya saw me very successful within 1 year, so that I got so many sincere young followers like yourself and others. So it was a great defeat to the activities of Maya. Western country youngsters giving up illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling is certainly a great reverse in the activities of Maya. Therefore, she took advantage of my old age weakness and gave me a death dash. But Krishna saved me. Therefore, we should thank more Krishna than eulogize Maya. So far as my present health is concerned, I think I'm improving. At least I'm taking lunch better than in New York. So as soon as I am a little fit to return to the field of battle, I shall again be in your midst. Srila Prabhupada envisioned an American house, a place where resident disciples could study Sanskrit and Vaishnava literature in Vrindavan. When he had suffered his stroke, he had said that Rai Rama should finish the translation of the Bhagavatams. He had also requested Achyutananda, Gaurasundara, and others to learn Sanskrit, Bengali, and Hindi so that if he did not recover, they could carry on his work. And he hoped that some of his leading men, like Brahmananda, Hayagriva, and Rai Rama, would come to India, obtain property, and establish his American house. Even if I am well, he wrote on September 9th, it is not possible for me to look after the affairs of the American house. Prabhupada decided to ask one of his godbrothers, Swami B.H. Bon Maharaj, to accommodate some students from America at his Institute of Oriental Philosophy. Swami Bon Maharaj's institute was a provincial college of about 300 students located in Vrindavan and affiliated with Agra University. It was what is known in India as a degree college, an institution geared towards improving the economic condition of its graduates by making them eligible for better jobs. When Srila Prabhupada and Kirtananda visited Swami Bon Maharaj at the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, Swami Bon received them in a clean parlor furnished with chairs, couches, and a radio. Swami Bon, wearing leather slippers, shorts visible through his thin dhoti, and an iron shirt with brass studs, appeared suave and sophisticated, an educated man with straight, neatly parted graying hair. Although a resident of Vrindavan in the 1930s, he had spent several years in England, where he had been received by members of the royal family and had lectured at a number of colleges, but he had aroused no lasting interest. When Prabhupada had been struggling alone in New York in 1965, he had written to Swami Bon asking for help, but Swami Bon had not responded. Even now, as Prabhupada told him of the work in America, Bon Maharaj didn't have much to say. But he was interested in the prospect of Americans coming to live and study at his institute. Foreign students would enhance the prestige of the institute in the eyes of the government. He said the students could possibly be accommodated free of charge. Encouraged by the meeting with Bon Maharaj, Prabhupada wrote several letters to his disciples inviting them to come and study Sanskrit. If you want to learn Sanskrit, there is ample opportunity in this institute. We had some preliminary talks, and it is hopeful that Swami Bon can give us some land for our own building. But even so, arrangements can be made with the existing facilities so that there would be no difficulty for the students who come here to study Sanskrit and the Goswami literature. It is a good opportunity for our students. I shall be very glad to learn how many of you desire to come. On Janmashtami Day, August 28th, Srila Prabhupada awarded the order of sannyasa to Kirtanananda in a ceremony in the Radha Damodar temple. Kirtananda thus became Srila Prabhupada's first disciple to become a sannyasi. Kirtanananda Swami. During the initiation, hundreds of visitors were present observing the birthday of Lord Krishna, and many of them came by to congratulate the young sannyasi. Someone said he looked like Lord Chaitanya. Srila Prabhupada wrote, he will be going back to the States very soon to begin preaching work with greater vigor and success. In the meantime, I shall try to utilize this white sannyasi for recruiting some members in India. Early in September, Achyutananda arrived in Delhi. A Hindu lady gave him 5 rupees and he took the train to Mathura, where he got directions to the Keshavji Gaudiya Math. Narayan Maharaj, a friend of Prabhupada's, took Achyutananda under his care, and after showing him the hall where Prabhupada had taken sannyas in 1959, put him on a bus to Vrindavan with an old gentleman for an escort. Accompanied by this escort, Achyutananda arrived by rickshaw before the Radha Damodar temple. Achyutananda walked into Prabhupada's room and fell prostrate at his feet. Oh, Prabhupada said, you are here. When Achyutananda looked up, he saw that Swamiji had a 5-day beard and was wearing only one piece of cloth, wrapped around his waist from behind, crossed over his chest, and tied behind his neck. Prabhupada smiled, apparently in good health. Kirtananda Swami also greeted Achyutananda and showed him his new danda. For Achyutananda, the most wonderful thing about Swamiji in Vrindavan was the simplicity of his life. Although in New York, Swamiji had worn simple robes, he had always been a regal, a guru. But here he lived very simply and humbly. Once, when he sat down on the veranda outside his room to wash his hands, his body instantly became covered with flies. Kirtananda and Achyutananda were always being bothered by the flies. This was a rainy season, but Prabhupada scarcely noticed them and sat quietly washing his hands. Kirtananda and Achyutananda agreed that Swamiji wasn't just another Vrindavan Babaji. There was no one else like him. Certainly, Gaurachand Goswami, proprietor of the Radha Damodar temple, wasn't like Swamiji. He wore thick glasses and could barely see, and when Kirtananda and Achyutananda went before the deities in the temple, Gaurachand Goswami asked them loudly, so how do you like them? Which one do you like the best? I like them all, said Achyutananda. I like that big one on the end there, said the priest, pointing to an offhand manner at the deity of Krishna. It looks a bit like General Chowdhury. Swami's boys exchanged looks. What kind of guys are these? And went back to Swamiji for an explanation. They are caste Goswamis, Prabhupada explained. The original Goswamis, such as Jiva Goswami, who established the Radha Damodar temple, had engaged householders to worship the deities. And these caste Goswamis were descendants of those first householder pujaris. Prabhupada explained that the caste Goswamis were the proprietors of the temples and that they maintained the temples and ran the deity worship as a business to support their families. Several years ago, each of the deities now on the altar had his own temple, land, income, and priests. But for economy, the Goswamis had sold the property, reduced the opulence of the worship, and amalgamated the deities. There were many other interesting characters. The old widow, Saranjini, with bald head, and Shikha and calloused bare feet, who slept in a room by the gate of the temple and swept Swamiji's kitchen and washed his clothes. Panchudas Goswami, the temple proprietor's son, who always chewed pan and went around sleepy-eyed in a silk dhoti with a red embroidered border. The dark old Babaji came at night, was constantly laughing, and who made sandalwood paste for Swamiji. The local herbal doctor, Vanamali Kaviraj, who presided, brightly smiling, from behind a desk in a tiny chamber filled from ceiling to floor with little bottles and a famous Pandit who visited Swamiji and wore a gold-linked Tulasi necklace and diamond rings. All of these persons were devotees, residents of holy Vrindavan, but no one was like Swamiji. Kirtananda even became disappointed that no one in Vrindavan was like Swamiji. In the land where everyone was an Indian and everyone was a devotee, Swamiji was still unique. No one else was so simple, so grave, so able to penetrate through falsity, so attractive to the heart, or so absolutely attached to Krishna. No one else could lead them. If Kirtananda Swami and Achyutananda were doubtful about some of the residents of Vrindavan, some of the residents of Vrindavan were also doubtful of them. When a European hippie couple wandered into Vrindavan one day, Achyutananda accompanied them to some of the temples. But at the Ranganath temple, they were refused entry. Achyutananda told Prabhupada, who replied, "That's because you went with those fools." When Prabhupada walked in the streets, people regularly nodded to him with respect, saying, "Dandavat Maharaj." But they were cautious about accepting his American followers as Vaishnavas. Srila Prabhupada, accompanied by his two disciples, again visited Swami Ban. Riding to Swami Ban's institute by rickshaw, Prabhupada told Achyutananda that Swami Ban had started the institute as an academy of Vaishnava studies, but had affiliated with Agra University because the institute had not been bringing in any money. Now Swami Ban had money, but the institute had become an ordinary school devoid of spiritual value. As Srila Prabhupada and his disciples sat in Swami Ban's parlor, Ban Maharaj made it clear that although he would not donate land for Prabhupada's American house, Prabhupada's students could come and study at his institution. Achyutananda he suggested would be the first one. Swami Ban then took them to the main building to visit a class in session. Instead of seeing Pandits and Brahmacharis studying Sanskrit, as they had expected, Prabhupada's disciples saw boys with thin mustaches and giggling girls. Prabhupada lectured and then asked Kirtananda to play the Hare Krishna record. After a few minutes, Ban Maharaj told Kirtananda to stop the record, but Kirtananda, seeing Swamiji enjoying the record, let it play. Achyutananda, we walked around the place and I thought, this is just a mundane school. I don't want to go here. If I could learn Sanskrit and live at the Radha Damodar temple, then I could have a nice time in India. They continued their tour of the facilities, and after seeing the dormitory, Prabhupada doubted whether his American disciples could endure the austerity and the academic studies. It seemed that one of the two boys was always sick. First, Kirtananda Swami had gotten dysentery, then something had been wrong with Achyutananda's stomach, and they had both been exhausted from the heat. On the whole, Srila Prabhupada wrote to Rupanuga in New York, the American boys who come here become first depressed. So I do not know how far our American house in Vrindavan will be successful. His boys were not particularly studious or austere. Besides, both Kirtananda Swami and Achyutananda had developed a definite dislike for the rector of the Institute of Oriental Philosophy. And Srila Prabhupada obviously had reservations about the place. You can go and study there, Prabhupada told them, but don't live there. Live at the Radha Damodar temple and go. You can get a bicycle and go there. Gradually, the idea of immediately acquiring an American house in Vrindavan began to dwindle. Prabhupada needed his own place for his disciples, and that would take time.
Okay, Masi. I think we can stop there. And one interesting thing here is you can see even Srila Prabhupada's godbrother had gotten into compromising Krishna consciousness for getting affiliation with Agra University in order to just derive some money. So this is just a natural tendency in this material world. Material energy is very powerful, so it will push all of us to depend on its illusion. It to depend on its ability to provide us different material things. And so that's when we start compromising our Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada, on the contrary, he always remained focused on the mission of his spiritual master. So he knew whatever is needed to accomplish that mission, Krishna and his Guru Maharaj would provide. And he did not think himself dependent on any material reality whatsoever. So he felt himself dependent only on the spiritual reality of Lord Chaitanya's order. Prithvite ache yata nagaradigram sarvatra purachara vemoranam. And he was very confident in the instructions of his spiritual master. He was not someone who could be attracted to the convenient ways of doing things materially and then call it Krishna consciousness. So he was very determined that Krishna consciousness can flourish independent of any dependence on anything material. So I think we'll stop there. And that's why it said very clearly that there is no one like Swamiji, because only such a person can be thoroughly humble and honest, patient, all the 26 qualities of a pure devotee. Okay, so any thoughts, reflections, questions, comments?
Krishna Prabhuji, Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much for a wonderful class, as always. It's always deeply moving listening to Prabhupada Lila Mitra. I really find very engrossing. I think all the points made earlier are all valid. I have a question for you in philosophical terms. I still find it difficult and to grapple with the fact that such pious souls that came into contact with Srila Prabhupada, like Kirtananda Swami. The first Swami, that Prabhupada initiated into sannyas, such close association, so much mercy, so much time spent in Vrindavan and in Srila Prabhupada's service, and yet we see perhaps you should enlighten, maybe not everyone knows, but the history of Kirtananda Swami, but how much far away that has ended up from the reality of Krishna consciousness. We see other sort of souls at very close proximity to Srila Prabhupada left. I know we've discussed this over and over again, but I still find it very difficult to grapple with in terms of so much mercy. And that, we of course know Krishna is merciful to a sincere soul. And these must have been sincere souls to have rendered so much service. And yet Maya has taken them away from not only Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, the movement, in such sort of horrific ways in many instances, and in such, unbelievable ways. How can we deal with?
And yeah, especially the current times that we're living in the last 1 month or so. This question has come up so many times. Okay. My realization is that to be an extraordinary follower of Prabhupada is not extraordinary enough. You need to be a perfect follower. That's very important. Because the process of Krishna consciousness is, it defies material energy. So there are many ways in which a person can do extraordinary things by virtue of being in Krishna consciousness, by virtue of trying to follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Even if one tries to follow one instruction or 2 instructions or whatever, so still the effect is there. But however, the point is that it is necessary to follow all his instructions perfectly. It's not enough to take one instruction and try to follow it perfectly. Of course, I'm not talking about Guru Datta Desh, or I'm not talking about specific instruction which one has received. That's there. Then one has to do that, focus on that. But the desire to become a strict follower of Prabhupada in 360-degree sense, let me put it like that. That is very important. It is not enough to become okay, somehow let me try to please Prabhupada. Let me do something and please Prabhupada. Of course, I'm not saying these are the causes for the fall down. I'm just saying something in general to begin with. So first of all, the desire should be, we want to become 100% followers of Prabhupada, not 99.9%, 100%. Just like Prabhupada said, I did not deviate 1 inch from my spiritual master. So that's the reason why I succeeded. So the formula for success has been very clearly stated by Prabhupada. So first of all, one should have the desire that we need to follow Prabhupada without changing even an inch of what he has taught. He is not enough to be extraordinary. It is also important to be perfect. So a lot of devotees did extraordinary things, but those who have tried to be his perfect followers have remained. Of course, now you could say that does it mean that others do not try to be his perfect followers? I think everybody set out. I can't say everybody, but I mean a significant or a lot of them would have set out to become perfect followers. But perfect follower is not a slogan that Krishna will really test. Do we really want it? Is that really what we mean? So he'll push us to the edge. And those who really want it, they will survive it. 100%. There's no question about it. There's no question of failure if one really wants it. So when one really doesn't want it, then the fall downs happen. Of course, sometimes the fall downs could be.
How do we? Sorry for cutting you on, Flo. I'm just whilst this coming to my head, I thought I'd put it out there, and then you can regain your flow with more vigor.
Okay.
So we read in the Bhagavatam, Ajamil didn't really want. We hear stories of this Mohammedan who said haram once, and he was liberated. Ajamil was fallen and wasn't even calling to Krishna's name. Because of his past Sukriti, he was somehow sort of saved and re-established. So these people do want, okay, they may not really want, but they're in a significantly better position than perhaps Ajamil or that Muhammad.
Correct.
And yet Krishna's grace on them hasn't flown as much as perhaps these other souls. Now I know it's not comparable instances, but where there is a sincerity of wanting to try, I mean, they've fallen, but the sincerity was there, and yet Maya has managed to capture them, even where you have somewhere like Ajamil, who was completely caught in Maya, wasn't even trying to call Krishna's name, yet was still given a path for liberation. How do we?
Yeah. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that what happens with Ajamil. So Ajamil, he did not have a guru. So sometimes devotees in our movement say that chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna is saying Nija Sarva Shakti. So Krishna invests all his potencies in the holy name. So just by chanting, you don't even have to accept a guru, just like Ajamil. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur clarifies there that Ajamil did not have a guru, did not have the facility to he did not have the knowledge of how to practice Krishna consciousness. So his chanting the holy name is considered as considered differently than us chanting the holy names. So when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that having known about the process of bhakti, if one uses the process of bhakti to overcome the need for a spiritual master, then one becomes fallen. So in the case of Ajamil, that's what happened. He did not have the knowledge. He was ignorant. So because he was ignorant and he chanted the holy name of the Lord accepted it. But one who
but that's not true, is it, Prabhuji? He was a Brahmin who was practicing Brahmin who fell from grace. So he knew he had the knowledge.
He did not understand the nuances of bhakti. He was just a Brahmin. Like Prabhupada explains, the difference between a Brahmana and a Vaishnava is that a Brahmana accepts, does not necessarily know about the personal form of God. He's mainly situated in the mode of goodness. He knows about God though, but he does not know much about the personal form of God. That's the difference between the Brahmana and Vaishnava. I can send you a quote. I'll send a quote in the group after this class. We proper differentiates between a Brahmana and a Vaishnava. So Vaishnava is someone who has accepted a pure devotee and has decided to follow in the footsteps of a pure devotee. Just like we saw this Ravindra Swarupa. He left, right? I mean, what was his difficulty? To follow the pure devotee. That was his difficulty. He said, I don't want that mediation, right? So the Brahmanas also have gurus and all that, but they don't accept the guru as their life and soul and all those things. That's not how they accept. Guru is a person from whom you learn. But guru is not a person like how Prabhupada accepted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Rekeha Kuruna, when he said that I should make the orders of my spiritual master my life and soul. That's a Vaishnava. That's a real follower. So that is what differentiates us from Ajamila. Means in the sense that we have the knowledge. So we cannot, those who have the knowledge of what is the right thing and what is the highest thing, cannot afford to overlook it and take refuge in anything else. So we know that our success depends on following a pure devotee perfect. That's what Krishna Consciousness is all about. Once we know that and we don't do it, then we don't get the result like a Jamin. I mean, what I'll do and again is I will bring that specific section of Vishnu Chakra Thakur and I'll post it on the group, so you can read it and see what the difference between us and he clearly says Vishnu Chakra Thakur. Once you have knowledge of it, then you cannot overlook it and try to do something else. Whereas Ajamil didn't have knowledge of it. He was a Brahmana, for sure. He was a devotee. Like a devotee in the normal sense of how there are devotees in India, right? Brahmana devotees of Krishna. But that does not mean that they, like for example, even the wives of the Brahmanas, even Krishna's pastimes, right? They knew about Krishna more than, even though their husbands were learned Brahmanas and Panditas and all that. Their understanding of their relationship, their understanding of Krishna was superior to their husbands. So Krishna will really push us. I mean, he will really test us. Like how when I took to Krishna consciousness, the temple president used to say that Krishna consciousness like tempering of steel. So you had to go through. You'll be put in hot water. I mean, intense. I mean, very hot water, and then immediately in cold water, very cold water, like that. So so in the process of that thing, the steel which comes out of it is called tempered steel. So Krishna puts us through the puts us through the tempering process to see whether we are determined to follow 100% in the footsteps of a devotee. We want to become dog of the Vaishnava, right? Vaishnava Acharyas have written. So that is the real mood of a Vaishnava. That is a defining characteristic of a Vaishnava. That is, wants to become 100% the servant of his spiritual master, not 99%. For us, that means Prabhupada, of course. I mean, it does not mean 99%, 99.9%. It means 100%. Just like Prabhupada said, I did not know anything other than what my spiritual master said. So, yes, but it will be tested. So when we fail the test, that means we're not 100%. I mean, that means we still have some way to go if we fail the test. But of course, Krishna consciousness is never a hopeless process. One can again try to resume. But unless one comes to that stage of 100% wanting to follow the pure devotee, there can be setbacks. In one's personal faith in Krishna consciousness, yes. I mean, other kind of setback we read about here, how Maya is fighting with Prabhupada. That's a different kind of setback. Setback to health and all that. But there's no setback in Prabhupada's mood and attitude and dedication to his spiritual master.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
I'm the same this one now. So like many people, they have left ISKCON when Prabhupada was also there, or as soon as Prabhupada left this planet. So like many people, they left the ISKCON, but one way or the other, maybe they are following. I'm not very sure whether they are following these principles or chanting. I do not know exactly. Their condition also same thing like what you said now, how they're testing and how they're following like that. Ruchi? Because many of them.
Prabhupada, he tried so much, even before he left this planet, he tried to integrate his Guru Maharaj's disciples by forming the Bhakti Swami Charity Trust. One of the purposes is to bring together all the disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So one way by which you can see whether someone is trying to follow is how hard they're trying to work cooperatively. Of course, even if they left the movement, so what? I mean, do they criticize ISKCON? What they do, that's very important also. I mean, if they have a cooperative attitude to work with ISKCON, that's still acceptable to Prabhupada. But not that the separatist mentality. Of course, ultimately Prabhupada wanted everyone to remain ISKCON. But even if someone has gone outside of it, still at the very least they should maintain an attitude of cooperation to serve the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada himself maintained that mood. So you cannot be a follower of Prabhupada when we don't have that mood of trying to cooperate to keep his preaching going.
Okay.
Generally, what I've seen is that those who leave ISKCON have a lot of they're antagonistic, or what do you call it? They speak against ISKCON.
Yes, Guruji. But like I had met few years back, Guruji. He was really like this one with Prabhupada and all, but he was telling about ISKCON, like management, how they manage now ISKCON. So he was a little bit against that one. He had once visited, I had the chance. He was against the policies, what is following currently in ISKCON. He was against that one, not anything about Prabhupada's main, his teachings or anything, Guruji. What about their...
The point is nobody will change his teachings. Otherwise, they cannot claim to be his followers, right? But the problem is whether they're following all his teachings or not. Nobody will try to, everybody will claim to be a follower of Prabhupada. But why would a follower of Prabhupada be interested in criticizing something that he crafted with his own hands? They can, I mean, do you find such people? When you meet them, you will come to know after some time. I mean, when you associate more, you'll come to know that they have a lot of things against. They can have differences. That's a different thing altogether. But usually they criticize, they discourage people, all these kind of things. So you don't find that, like during Prabhupada's time, there was this Siddha Swarupananda who wanted to separate from ISKCON. At one point, Prabhupada said, okay, even if you want to separate from ISKCON, but he did not encourage the idea of, he was saying that book distribution was not important. Then Prabhupada became very angry. He said that the fruit should taste the same. So you cannot have something else going on, So it's only a hypothetical possibility as far as I know, as far as I've seen. I mean, maybe not be hypothetical possibility since Prabhupada himself, in a rare occasion, said it's possible. But it's very, very rare. I haven't seen that so far.
Okay.
We haven't come to a situation where someone is actually trying to, we haven't come to that kind of a scenario where people are trying to genuinely follow Prabhupada and they're being sent out of ISKCON. It doesn't happen like that. Of course, I'm not saying everybody's treated properly. There may be mistreatments, there may be different things, but we haven't come to a situation where somebody's preventing you from waking up in the morning and doing Mangalarati and chanting 16 rounds. And we haven't come to that situation. So one can still, whatever be the institution's problems and its different things, whatever it may be, how does it matter for us, those who want to practice Krishna consciousness? Are we being stopped from following Prabhupada's teachings? No. Whether someone is following or not is their problem, and between them and Prabhupada. But are we being restricted in our practice of Krishna consciousness? That's very important.
Yeah, but that is true, Prabhuji. Like we are doing, like they might be doing these all these regulative, this and doing Mangalarti, all those things, but they may not be the part of ISKCON as such. They may not be visiting the ISKCON temples, or they may not be like visiting any of ISKCON members or anything. They are doing their independent some sadhana, staying away from all these ISKCON activities or anything. They may be practicing privately, Prabhuji. So, like,
There are things, okay, let me just put it like this. I mean, let's take Prabhupada's own statement and then let's try to understand it a little bit more in detail. Okay, so he says that anyone who thinks that they can practice Krishna consciousness outside the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is living in a hallucination, he says. It's in the Bhagavatam. No. So, first of all, we should take that to be true. Okay. So, if there is an exception to that, it is very rare. Of course, generally, Vedic statements always have exceptions. So, this statement could also have exceptions. Whereas during Prabhupada's time, he considered an exception. But anyway, that didn't work. But so what I'm trying to say is that we should be first of all convinced of the general rule. Then we should consider the exception. Okay, the general rule is we're outside the society of, Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam purport, it's there. So if you are his follower, we need to accept it. So unless the governing body of ISKCON starts speaking against Prabhupada, and then you could say, okay, some of them are not following. Forget about not following or not. Are they speaking against Prabhupada? That is very important. Are they preventing you from following what Prabhupada wanted us to follow? Then it's fine. As long as that is not there, okay, you could say that maybe there are some leaders who are also presenting Prabhupada and also mixing it up with other things. But as long as they are not speaking against Prabhupada, as long as the GBC body are not passing resolutions which are against Prabhupada's teachings, these other things Prabhupada knows how to fix it, and these things will be fixed by Krishna over a period of time. But because the principle is that the holy name cannot be stopped. So if one chants the holy name sincerely, then one will be able to accomplish the mission of Srila Prabhupada, at least in one's own limited way. So that way, if everybody tries to practice chanting of the holy names and following his teachings properly, everybody will be able to implement his teachings in a limited way within their circle. And if everybody starts doing it, that itself is ISKCON, right? ISKCON is a collection of members. We don't even have a legal structure to govern ISKCON. The governing body is just, they don't have legal authority to control membership of ISKCON. You could say yes, but in a generic sense, I'm talking. In a specific sense, in certain areas, yes. But in general, our lives are not being controlled by the GBC or things like that. Our lives are generally controlled by our own mind. So we should realize that we generally controlled by our own minds. So if we focus on the fact that we have full freedom to practice Krishna consciousness, so then somebody can say, okay, I want to preach like this, but then I've been restricted from preaching like this. I've been asked to preach some other way, but at least it's still preaching. As long as people don't say that preaching is not important anymore in our movement, that's something which is against the instructions of Prabhupada. So generally, we haven't come across those kind of situations yet. We don't know in the future how things are going to turn out to be, but there's nothing to worry. Because I remember, I don't know if I said this in the proper Lilamrita session. One day I had this thought that will ISKCON continue for the next 10,000 years? Is that going to happen? So I had this realization one day while having breakfast that even if ISKCON collapses, that's why Prabhupada stress so much on the books, because everything is there and he's very thoroughly presented the philosophy in the books. So I was thinking that somebody will read it and will be able to do it all over again. So I told this to my wife, and that I had this realization today, but I have nothing to confirm unless I see something from Prabhupada himself or something like that. I can't confirm. This is just a thought or just a realization, but I can't confirm the realization. I don't even know. It's only tentative. So that day when I walked into my office, a little later, at that time, Badri Narayan Prabhu, but now he's Badri Narayan Swami. So he walked into my office and he said, hey, Prabhu, you want to listen to a Prabhupada story? I said, yes. And he said that he was walking with Prabhupada. They were all walking together with Prabhupada in Devasadan Mandir, Detroit. And they were trying to explore the possibilities, Vision Mansion. the Fisher Mansion, which is Devasadan Mandir now. So Fisher Mansion, they're trying to explore the possibility of buying it. So they're not at bottom. So suddenly at one point during the walk, Prabhupada turned towards his disciples and he said, even if each of you would leave the temples, even if ISKCON were to shut down, someone will read Prabhupada's book, someone will read my books and re-establish the whole thing all over again. So then I told him, look, I just had this thing in the morning and here it is, Badrinaran Maharaj on the same day confirming it. So I'm not so much worried about all these different things because ultimately the books are there. And as long as the books are there, Krishna Swadhamopagate Dharmagyana Dibisaha Kalo Nashtadrishamesha Puranarko Adunoditaha. So Prabhupada's books are there to give direction in the dense darkness of Kali Yuga. The Bhagavatam with Prabhupada's purport will give full direction in the dense darkness of Kali Yuga, and everything can be put in perfect order. So whatever mess may be happening, as long as the books are there, everything can be put in perfect order. So therefore, there's nothing to be hopeless or nothing to be really worried about.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll stop here for today. There are no further thoughts, reflections, or questions. Thank you all of you for joining. Continue next Sunday. Vanchakalpadurubhisha, Kapasundabhya, Vichapatitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnebhyo, Namo Namo.